Welcome back to the IE427 garage, everybody. Can you see what's behind me? The 25th anniversary car is back on the lift. All right, I've been having trouble the last couple days doing any videos because one of the dogs in the neighborhood is just non-stop barking. And today's the first day that it's been relatively quiet. Could be because it's hot here, but that's okay. The shop is nice and cool, and we're gonna just push on through. So the 25th anniversary car is back on the lift. We're waiting on parts for Jim's car, some of which we've gotten back, but I'll get into that on the next video for Jim's car. I have been working on the car, but again, haven't been filming. So what we're working on right now is the braking system. We're working on the brake reservoirs for the Wilwood pedal assembly. And I've already got those in place. Since it is hot outside, I'm going to keep the doors shut. So I'm just going to kind of give you a view of what the bracket looks like. So here I made a bracket out of some aluminum angle. And at first I was going to cut this off, but this actually makes a good spot to hide the wiring and a place to fasten it down. So I think I'm going to leave it. And then you can see from here what those reservoirs look like, those aluminum reservoirs. They're really nice looking pieces from Mk4, and with them all mounted on there, they really look like they belong. So Mike also provided us some fittings for the bottom of these. Originally they were, I think this is 6 ORB AN, so that's O-ring, and we changed those they were 6 ORB to 3 AN. So it was 3 AN at the bottom, and we changed these to 6 ORB at the top to 4 AN, and then Mike was able to supply us these 90s, which are 4 AN to 1/4 inch push lock. And those are going to be work out perfect for us because we'll be able to get those 3 through our firewall here. I've got a grommet installed. It's one of these push type grommets. So it'll make a nice tight seal around the hoses that we're going to push through there, and hopefully we won't get a whole lot of air leakage into the cockpit. The other thing that I've been working on right now, I do have the clutch hose up here. I haven't decided exactly where I'm going to put the hole on the side of the footbox for that, so I've got to work on that. But I want to get these reservoirs in, and I want to get the brakes bled over the next couple of days. So what I've done is the caps here, the adapter caps were installed on here, but there was no fluid on the O-rings. And I always like to get a little bit of fluid on the O-rings so that they seal better. So I took them off. I'm in the process of getting the O-rings lubricated, and then we'll get those caps put back on. We'll get the clamps put on. And then what I'm using is I'm actually using some, I think this is Goodyear hose that I picked up at, nope, Continental. So Continental hose that I picked up at the local hose shop. Jason over there hooked me up, and we're going to be using that. I did get hose with the Wilwood kit from Factory 5. The problem is I don't think there's going to be enough of it for all 3 lines, and I did want the hose all to match. So I have these 2 pieces, which are very much the same. They are they Goodyear? It says made in the USA. These are Gates hoses. So regardless, I've got enough to make 3 equal, well, I guess they're going to be different lengths, 3 of all the same type of hose to go into the master cylinders from the reservoir. So that's what I'm going to be working on for the next couple hours this evening. I will bring you back when I've got some more of that in place and get you all caught up. Alright, I'm just about ready to wrap things up for this evening. I've got all of the supply hoses from the reservoirs to the master cylinders in and done. And I'm glad I bought extra hose because I wouldn't have had enough. I think I've got a piece sitting over there. I think it's about 6-8 inches long. I'll show you when I'm done here. These fittings from Mk4, they really worked out great. Even though we're not using actual push lock hose, with a clamp on there, I don't think we're gonna have any problems with them sealing. We'll find out tomorrow. I'm gonna fill the system up tomorrow and we're gonna make this thing bleed. So here you go. The fittings that we've got in here from Mike are nice and clean. You can see I went through the trouble of using black hose clamps on there. These are the fuel injection type clamps. That they're the ones I had in black, and they look nice and clean. So that's what we're using here. I'm gonna probably fill up the reservoirs tonight before I go in, all except the clutch, because I don't have the clutch high pressure side tied in yet. And that way, hopefully, it'll get some of the air out of the hoses here. There's no telling whether it will or it won't, but the fluid will at least be in there. And then I've got a rubber stopper for these reservoirs that I'm hoping will slide in there for my pressure bleeder, and then I'll just use a clamp to hold the stopper in there. But you can see, same thing over on this side, nice and clean. The grommet came out really nice. This one is a little bit of a thinner membrane in the center. So I was able to pull the hoses through, and then there's enough flexibility in that rubber that it compressed around the outside of the hoses. So if you look here from the inside, you can see how nice and tight that rubber has conformed around the outside of the hoses. So we shouldn't get very, very much air leakage at all into the foot box. And then, like I said, I'm gonna come out here tomorrow and see if I can't get the brakes bled. I'll do what I can by myself. Usually what I'll do is I'll use a pressure bleeder to get all the air out, or the majority of the air out. And that'll usually bring the pedal nice and firm. But there are those rare instances that you still have to do traditional bleeding on this stuff. And the Wilwood calipers are one of those instances because they have bleeder screws on the top and the bottom. And normally what I do is I open up the bleeders on the bottom first. And that way any air will escape down there, and hopefully the fluid drops down into the bottom portion of the caliper. And then what I do is I bleed from the top, and then I'll bleed from the bottom again and then the top. So I got to bleed each caliper 4 times, and it's a little bit of a pain in the neck, but you know what? I've had good luck doing it that way. But then at the end, after we're probably ready to put the body back on, I'll get a helper. We'll go around the car one more time, and we'll pressure bleed it with the brake pedal itself, because it's going to be much higher pressure that way, and that'll get any remnants of air out of the lines. I wanted to make sure that I showed you how much hose I had left. Now I picked up 3 feet of hose at the hose shop, and that's about all I had left. So that is it right there. And there's no way that I would have had enough, especially because these were pre-cut lengths. So I would have only gotten, two feeds out of that, and I would have run short. Now I'm sure I probably could have scrounged some up that looked similar, but even the diameter of the hose is different. The diameter of the hose that I picked up at the hose shop is a little bit smaller than the hose supplied either from Wilwood or Factory 5. I'm not sure who supplies that, but so it went into the grommet in the firewall a little bit better too. So I will catch up with you guys tomorrow. Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven. All right, it's the next day. I have already started bleeding the brakes. I have the back brakes pretty much wrapped up, and I'm going to show you how I do the Wilwoods. You can do them however you want. You can follow Wilwood's instructions. Honestly, I've just done them this way. I don't even think I've looked at the Wilwood instructions, but you should. There are 4 bleeder screws. So there is a bleeder screw top and bottom for both sets of pistons. So pistons on the outside, pistons on the inside. There are 2 more bleeder screws, 1 top, 1 bottom. So what I do is I always start with the bottoms, and I work my way from the inboard first to the outboard bottom. Then I move to the top, I do the inboard top, and I do the inboard outside. About this time, you're going to have to fill your reservoir again. And depending on what size your reservoir is, so if you're using the factory 5 reservoir, it's not that big, and it's doing both the front and the back. We're doing ours with separate reservoirs, front and rear, so double the amount of brake fluid. But by the time you do a fresh bleed with lines that have no brake fluid in them, whatever, you're going to start running that level down. Now, I am using the power bleeder, but I don't use it, again, I don't use it according to the instructions. I found that when I use it, but going by the instructions, I end up making a mess. They want you to fill the container, the pressurized container, about halfway up with brake fluid. And what I found is if I have a leak, for instance, right? You do your initial brake bleed and you've got a leak, which we had, and I'll show you here in a second. It is pressurized. The only way you can stop the flow is to crack the top of the pressure bleeder. So you'll basically have to unscrew the top here to get rid of the pressure. So what I end up doing is I end up filling the reservoirs almost all the way to the top, because you're going to go through the fluid anyway. And then I just pressurize air in the power bleeder, and that'll help push that fluid through. And I know that especially when I'm doing the back, that I'm going to go through a lot of fluid. So by the time I get the passenger side rear done, I know I've got to get more fluid in, otherwise I'm going to run it dry and have to start all over again. Which isn't the worst thing in the world when you're doing a fresh bleed, because you're still going to have air in the line anyway. So you're going to start with the passenger rear, and then you're going to go to the driver's rear. Now, in a case like this where you have separate reservoirs for the back and the front, you don't have to concern yourself with, starting here and then going to the other side and then going up here and going a lot. You can actually start with the front passenger side, because it's on a separate circuit and it has a separate reservoir, so it's not going to affect the bleeding at all. But I just got in the habit of always doing it this way, because some of the cars that I build still have a traditional master cylinder, like when we do power brakes, like on Michael's car, or my car, for instance. It has a single reservoir, and so you have to start from the farthest point. So I've got the brakes started, the brake bleeding started, and I'm just in the process now. I'm going to put the rear wheels back on the car, and this won't be the last time we bleed this car. We'll probably move it around. We'll be pressing on the brake pedal, adjusting the brake bias and all that stuff before we get the body put on for the final time. We'll go back and we'll re-bleed the entire system, just to make sure that any air that may still be in the system has had a chance to migrate out to the bleeder screws, and then we'll get that residual air out and everything will be good. But very rarely do we find like a huge amount of air in the lines. It'll just be a couple of bubbles right there at the end. All right, everybody, brakes are done. I got the fronts bled. I still have the clutch to bleed, so I'll probably include that. But I'm going to wrap this all up today. I need to put the wheels on. I need to clean up some of the brake fluid that got on the shop floor. I did say in a social media post that we're going to make this thing bleed today, and boy did we. It got me right there. The line wasn't tight at the caliper, and that was probably on me, because I think I took that line loose. The front, however, was a different story. And I've said this before, when you're following someone else's work, you have to check this stuff. And in this case, it didn't hurt anything. I just got some brake fluid on the runways of the lift. But these fittings right here were not screwed in. I added some thread sealant to them. These fittings were not tight, so the AN3 to the fitting on the caliper was not tight, and then the fitting on this side was not tight. So when I went ahead to put pressure in it, and this was on both sides. So, like I said, you know, when you take a build over for someone, you may run into this stuff. Should I have checked it? Absolutely. I should have checked this stuff before I even put brake fluid in the lines. I put brake fluid in last night before I went in, just so that, you know, I might get a little migration into the master cylinders. And that's the other thing. Halfway through the brake bleeding, if you have not bench bled the masters, which is difficult in these because the masters are inside the car, and you know, you don't want to get brake fluid all over the inside of the car. You're going to have to do this twice. You're going to have to go around the car twice anyways. Because even though you get brake fluid to the bleeder screws at each of the calipers, you may not be getting rid of all the air in the master cylinders themselves. There is some cavities, you know, there's a cavity inside where the piston is, and you may not completely fill that up. So somewhere through your bleeding procedure, if you're using a power bleeder, make sure you push on the pedal a few times to push that air past the piston, or push it around the piston or into the piston, whatever. Push the brake pedal a few times so that you can get that air that's in there into the lines that go back or to the front calipers. And then you're going to have to go around again and bleed them again. I've just gotten used to doing that. I usually do an initial bleed all the way around the car. I cycle the brake pedal, you know, half a dozen times. And you'll know, because the brake pedal, it won't come up. The pedal won't come up in height. And so you'll know that you've definitely got air in the master cylinders. So at that point, just, you know, go around the car again, re-bleed it again, and then the pedal should come right up. So you can see I've got the pedal, see if I can push with my hand, right there. It's as hard as it's going to go. You know, I might be able to get some more pressure with my foot than I can with my arm, but it's right near the top. And like I said, we may end up bleeding this once again before it goes to have the body put on for the final time. In the front, the caliper is a little bit different, so you only have a top bleeder and a bottom bleeder. But I do it the same way. I generally open the bleeder at the bottom until I get fluid out. I close it, and then all my bleeding from that point forward is all from the top. All I'm trying to do is get any air out that might be in the bottom half of the caliper, because you've got the fitting here, and that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to get this air out in here. So once that's done, you can just concentrate on the top bleeder, and you should be fine. So I'm going to wrap this up for today. I will probably see you tomorrow, because I'm going to work on that clutch the rest of the day, see if I can't get that thing ready to go so I can bleed that tomorrow. So the hydraulic system on the car is pretty much done, other than the power steering. The lines are in, but I'm missing one 90-degree fitting, and I'm going to have to run out to the hose shop to pick that up, because I want to get a stainless steel one rather than anodized black or one or the other, because all the fittings on that power steering are stainless steel. And so we're just going to go ahead and pick up a stainless steel 90, and then that'll be done, and we can put fluid in the power steering. And from there, who knows? I've still got to work on the heater and some other stuff. I'm rambling, so I'm going to see you guys tomorrow. All right, everybody. Next day, I'm lowering the lift down. We did get the clutch all wrapped up, but we did run into some issues. So I'm lowering the lift down. I'm going to kind of go over what we did, what we found, and then what we did to remedy it. I don't want the lift to hit Jim's car. So we went to bleed the clutch master cylinder, and I hooked up my power bleeder just like I always do, and I didn't think much of it. I wasn't getting any fluid down at the slave cylinder at the transmission, and so I thought, well, you know, maybe because this line is, you know, it's pretty good size. I think it's a 1/4 inch line, maybe 3/16. I don't know. That maybe I just wasn't getting fluid because, you know, it's a lot of volume and it had to fill it up. And I thought, well, maybe I ran out of fluid in the reservoir. So I lowered the car down, checked the reservoir, it was still full. And so then I began on my quest to find out why. And so the first thing I did was I disconnected the line to the master right here. And I wanted to see if I got fluid there. And so I loosened the clamp, and then I pulled this off, and I put my thumb over the end so I didn't get fluid everywhere, because you can see the fuse box is right there. And a little fluid in the foot box wouldn't be the end of the world, but I still wouldn't want to get it everywhere. And then I drained the entire contents of the reservoir into a cup. And so then I knew that there was nothing in the hose, and my problem was from here down to the slave cylinder. So my next, and I should have just started at one end and worked my way all the way down, but I didn't. What I did next was I disconnected the line here, the stainless braided line. I think it's a 3AN, and I disconnected it down at the slave cylinder, and I wanted to see if I could get air to go through it. So I just blew through it, and if you guys have ever tasted brake fluid, it sucks. But I was able to blow through it, and of course a little bit of the fluid that had actually gotten by was in there. It was very little though, just a few drops. And I thought, well, that's funny. I got air to go through here. I got fluid to come through the other side, so it's got to be in the master. And it was getting late, and so I thought, well, what's the worst? I mean, I will pull the master out. There's plenty of videos on YouTube and Rumble and all these other platforms on how to disassemble a Wilwood master cylinder. And so I viewed a couple of those, and I thought I was pretty confident I could get it apart. So in the morning, I thought, well, I'll just pull this apart and see what's going on. And so I pulled the snap ring out, and I pulled the piston out, and the seals all look brand new, because they are. And everything looked like it was in working order. And so while it was out, I reassembled it. I put a little bit of brake fluid in just the little cup where the reservoir cap goes on. And then I pushed the plunger, and I got fluid to shoot out of it. And I thought, well, that's funny. It seems like it's working, but maybe I did something. Maybe there was something inside that wasn't allowing fluid to get by, and by taking it apart, I loosened it up, and now everything is good. So I put it back in the car, put it all back together, got it adjusted back up, and then I put the fittings. There's an adapter fitting, which is an NPT to 3AN adapter that goes into the end of the master cylinder, and then there's a 3AN swivel 90. So it's a swivel female, so you can tighten it down and get it in any angle you want it. And then the other side is just a male 3AN. And I put that on there, and then I figured, well, before I connect the braided line down to the transmission, I'm going to check to see if I can get fluid through. And so I hooked up the power bleeder and just put a couple of pounds of pressure in it, and I'm getting nothing. And so then I went ahead and I pushed on the clutch pedal, and the clutch pedal is locked. I mean, it's right at the top, because now I know I've got fluid into the master cylinder, because the power bleeder is pushing fluid in there. And so as soon as I pushed on it, it was just rock solid at the top. It would not push, it wouldn't engage, which is the same thing it was doing last night. And I thought, well, it's got to be these two fittings. Everything else is clear. So first thing I did is I disconnected that swivel 90. I kind of put it off to the side, and I took that adapter fitting, that NPT to 3AN fitting out, and then I just held it up to the light. And I'll be damned, I could see right through. It was clear, and it's a good size orifice in there, so it's not like anything can be clogged in there. So now I'm down to this last piece, and of course, where are your keys? Well, they're always in the last place you look. Well, there was some debris in the last place I looked, which was right in this 90. It looks like what had happened was a piece of foam. You know how when you break up foam, you get those little foam pellets? One of those foam pellets was just soaked in brake fluid, and it was jammed into the orifice of the cup side, the female side of that swivel of that 90. And so every time you would apply pressure, it would just jam this thing in there, and it wouldn't move because it was bigger than the orifice that it was trying to fit through. And I would have thought that it would have compressed. The problem is brake fluid doesn't compress much, and it had already soaked up so much brake fluid that it just would not compress. When I pulled it out, it took quite a bit of pressure when you put that little foam ball in your hand to compress the brake fluid out of it. So that thing was jammed in there. Now, I don't know where it came from, and I'm not pointing any fingers. Hell, it could have happened here in the shop. And I don't remember any foam in the packing that the box that it came in. If I remember, everything was packed in those expanding clear, air pocket thingies. So I don't know where that foam ball came from, but I blew it out of there. I got everything clear. I cleaned the inside of the fitting with a cotton swab just to make sure that I didn't have anything else in there. I sprayed it out with some brake clean just to be on the safe side. Put it back together, and I had that clutch bled in, I kid you not, 5 minutes. I hooked up the power bleeder, I opened up the bleed screw, got it to where there was no air coming out. Then I came up to the top. I pushed the pedal down a couple of times to get any residual air that might have been in the master kind of free. And then I bled it once more until I got the rest of the air out, and that was it. And the clutch is working perfectly. I'll insert a video right here. Did anything move? Mm-hmm. So what should have been just a routine, run around the car, bleeding brakes and doing all that stuff, turned into a nightmare. And I even posted on social media last night that my day went from really bad to worse, which was true. The car fought me. I had a talk last night with the owner of the car, and I told him some of the problems I ran into, and I go, hey, look, I am not blaming you for any of this. The fittings that I found that were loose on the car are on me. I should have made sure that all the fittings were tight before I even got into this. And I just saw that they were connected, meaning they had been run on the threads, and figured that they were tight, and some of them weren't. And so I had a mess on the floor. It's not a big deal. It's not the first mess I've had on the floor, but I just wanted him to know that I was not casting any blame on anybody, because this was on me. But we got everything bled, and everything's in really good shape now. We have a brake pedal that's right at the top. We have a clutch pedal that's right at the top. We can adjust the throw of the pedal anywhere we want, because I left the shaft on the master for the clutch longer than it needed to be. So we can run it in or we can run it out depending on where he wants the feel of the clutch to be. So we're good there. We do have some adjustment down below too on the rod that goes into the clutch fork mechanism. So we have adjustment on both sides. It's easier to adjust it down on the bottom if you get the car jacked up, but you can just as easily do it on the top if you pull the cover off of the footbox. So I think that's going to wrap things up for the brake bleeding, and I will catch up with you guys the next time we're working on the 25th anniversary car, which I believe is going to be working on the heater and probably the wipers, and I think I'm going to have to relocate some of the Ford control pack stuff, but we'll see. All right, that's going to do it for this one. If you guys and gals are enjoying the content, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that good stuff, and we will see you next time. Have a great day.